Hey there. I'm so glad that you're here because you are about to meet Dr. Anushree Kumar, who is a menopause specialist. She is an MD, an internal medicine physician that specializes in menopause care. And I ran across Dr. Kumar at an in person event where she truly blew my mind with some of the things that she was recalling about women and their perimenopausal, menopausal journey. And I really thought that she was talking directly to me because she hit the nail on the head with so many different things that I stumbled across in my journey to find treatment. And so, with all of the things that she was saying, I was learning so much, I was absorbing all of it. I was like, you got to come on the podcast and talk to the ladies that are actively searching for relief and solutions and very practical ways to talk to their doctors about what's going on with their bodies and what type of treatment they need to seek out in this season. So, if you are Googling this information right now, you're trying to figure out what's going on with your health, then, honey, I invite you to stick around for this episode. So, we talk to Dr. Kumar about menopause, perimenopause, and all of the things that go along with it. So, let's dive in. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Melanated Midlife podcast. I am going to be talking about, I'll say, one of my top three favorite topics. And I've got a full blown MD that is going to help moderate some of my fears and all of your questions. But aside from talking about business and money, my next favorite thing is talking about menopause. And I know that sounds weird, but I'm sure you are coming to this episode because you got all the questions and all the thoughts. So with me for this talk is Dr. Anushree Kumar, who is, and I'm going to make sure I read this right because I want to make sure your authority is out there. She is a board certified internal medicine physician and a Menopause Society certified menopause practitioner. And I'm saying all of this because I want you to be able to explain to us in just a second why that distinction is so important, because you blew my mind when we first met that there's not a lot of MDs that have this distinction. And I was like, holy smokes, just stop the presses. I thought that anybody could talk to me about menopause. And you were like, oh, no, 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 no. That is not the case. So, welcome, Dr. Kumar, to the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
And I'm going to just say out loud, with you being here, I mean, even though we're remote, you are Houston based. So anybody that's going to say, how do I get in touch with her? Well, you got to fly to the medical capital of the world.
Yeah. Yes, I am Houston based. Houston's a large city, but if you can drive about 20 minutes, you should be able to make it to my place from pretty much anywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, aside from being all the things of an authority with just this whole world of menopause, perimenopause, I mean, how'd you get so focused on this area? How in the world did you land here?
Yeah. So I am an internal medicine physician. And I went into internal medicine because I had an interest in the whole body, all the organ systems, how they work together, right? Growing up, I think preventative health was always kind of my passion, right? And after I finished residency a little bit over a decade ago, believe it or not, I did some hospitalist work, which means I was working with patients who were in the hospital for acute illnesses, heart attacks, pneumonias, more serious conditions. I did that for a few years. And what I really realized was that by the time patients are so sick, they're in the hospital, there's very little you can actually do for them. It's really
Yeah.
just such reactive medicine, like control the condition. I mean, of course, it's such an important field of medicine, but it's control the condition, fix the problem and then send them home. But like
Mm.
real medicine and real health comes from prevention. So, part of that, as I start practice more and more, I think I realized that midlife is the time when we have to work on our bodies. I mean, that is when prevention really starts. You can go through your 20s and 30s and do whatever you want, eat whatever, drink, stay up late. And a lot of people who are, otherwise healthy, they don't really feel the effects of that. Or, in my case, I was in medicine, I was working 30-hour shifts and I could handle it. But then once we hit midlife, these late 30s, all those things really catch up. Our genetics, our lifestyle, our the choices that we make. And so I got really interested in that phase. And then, of course, in the past few years, as I started practicing it, we started learning how women's health and men's health differ on so many different ways. And there's such a gap, such a lack of knowledge of how hormones and hormonal health influences a woman's health as she gets older.
Yeah.
So it's just been so fascinating. I mean, this is not stuff menopause medicine, it's not something that we've learned in medical school or training. And today physicians who train, few years out, unless they've taken out the time to do coursework to re-educate, and which is not easy for a lot of busy career physicians, they really unfortunately haven't learned this stuff because our knowledge base, our world just didn't even know about it.
I'm I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and I remember that moment again when we met because you were doing a talk and I was there, like a nerd, listening to more menopause facts. And you said, even in the city like Houston, where you truly can throw a stick and you will hit a doctor or some type of wellness practitioner at least.
Yeah, at
And
every corner.
right. But you said the field is of specialty is so narrow. How many true menopause doctors would be here in this town?
Yeah. So, over the past so many years, because there was such a big gap in information and research, the wellness industry has really come in. And the wellness industry is a profit based industry, and they have really capitalized on this gap in knowledge and this unmet need of women. So we have a lot of companies and a lot of, quote unquote, different types of providers that they're training, marketing therapies to women in menopause that may or may not be research based, evidence based, they may or may not be effective. And the side effects or the potential harms of these treatments are not being publicized and told to the people who are receiving these treatments. There are specialists in Houston who are getting into menopause medicine. And I think what I was telling you, that I'm a board certified internal medicine doctor, I think that really sets me apart because as I've always studied every organ system in the body. And
Hmm.
what we're learning is that menopause and hormones and estrogen, progesterone, these are not hormones that are only affecting our ovaries and our uterus, right? They affect every organ system in our body. They affect our brain, they affect our heart, our joints. And so menopause medicine really is not its own field per se. It's not in isolation. It's another layer on everything we do know about internal medicine. But like when a woman is going through perimenopause and menopause, how is that affecting her cardiovascular disease risk, right? I mean, diabetes, smoking, high
Yeah.
blood pressure, these are still very real risk factors for heart attacks. But now we know how menopause is also a potential layer of risk or benefit depending on the
Yeah.
woman in her heart health, and we have the same we're learning the same kind of thing when it comes to things like, mental health disorders like depression, anxiety, or diabetes, weight gain, cognitive health, right? So it's just so cool to understand these organ systems from an internist perspective and then just add on the layer of, okay, perimenopause, estrogen, like what is that all how is that contributing, I
Yeah.
can't tell you in the clinic how many women I see who are like 40 to 45 years old and they have palpitations, okay? And they could swear to God that they're sitting there and their heart is racing, they're getting dizzy, they don't know what to do, and they think they're having a panic attack, they think they're having a heart attack. They go to a cardiologist, they get literally like $100,000 workup, every study, everything is completely normal. And then the poor cardiologist is like, I don't know what to do for you. Like everything is normal. And they come to my clinic, we start them on hormone therapy, and I can't tell you how many of them respond. That the palpitations are better or they're eliminated. And now we know that there's hormone receptors in the heart as well. But like on the flip side of that, any woman with palpitations, I would be doing be doing malpractice if I said automatically, "Oh, that's hormones, that's menopause,"
Yeah.
right? I mean, we have to do our due diligence, like, we have to know, okay, you have palpitations. It could be an arrhythmia. It could be like a structural heart issue. There could be some other hormonal imbalance. We have to work up everything, make sure it's not that before we say, okay, it's menopause. And I think like what's happening is that in today's world, everything is getting attributed to menopause, right?
Mm.
Any midlife
Mhm.
woman, she's like, I have headaches. You need hormones. I can't sleep at night. You need hormones. But that's not really the way. There's so many factors that are contributing to our health. And,
You're
you have to
describing this
think
is
about
my
all of them.
exact journey.
Yeah,
Everything you're saying is my exact journey because that's what happened is that there were swirling symptoms, and I don't know if it was all related
I'm
to
telling you, this is so
perimenopause or
common that, like, every woman is going through this. I already know it.
yeah, I mean, because it was like all of the things that felt manageable. And
Yeah.
then once I started having these weird heart palpitations, and hit it on the head, I thought it was just okay. I'm coming into a season where I'm just going to have panic attacks. I dismissed it as
Yeah.
that and went, to my primary doctor and I'm describing what's happening. And of course, you'd start talking about heart and all of the alerts, the alarm, the questions, okay, what about this? What about that? And we got to the point where, like you said, we're gonna do all of the tests. We're going to do whatever deep dive. And something in me said, "This isn't it. That's not it. Something
Yeah.
else."
Yeah, and a lot of
And
women just feel like it's not it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, that started my rabbit hole. And so when you got to that point, I was like, wait a second, is she looking at my chart? Wait wait.
You're not my patient yet.
Yeah, not yet. See there? Yep. But I want you to just kind of back up a little bit because that terminology alone, perimenopause, menopause, I am transparent to be able to say that when I entered this season, I did not know the difference between perimenopause and menopause until someone sat down in very plain language and told me what that is. So, what is the distinction between perimenopause and menopause?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually the best place to start because we have so much information on the internet, but it still gets confusing. So, quick definitions. So, menopause actually is the single day in time when a woman hasn't had a period or a menstrual cycle for 12 months. That day she is in menopause. Everything after that, she's postmenopausal, and before that, she's premenopausal. Okay. Now we have this term perimenopause. And so perimenopause is specifically this 5 to 10 year phase where a woman is transitioning into menopause. So, yes, it can last 5 to 10 years, and it's basically characterized by declining and erratic ovarian function. The average age of menopause is around 51, 52, and we say perimenopause. So, the hormone changes, like the ovaries getting kind of old and malfunctioning, that can start up to 10 years before that age. And so,
Okay.
yeah. And so, we have estrogen receptors everywhere in our body. Okay. So we have them in our brain, in our heart, in our uterus, in the bones, the joints. And so when the ovaries are starting to kind of get old and malfunction, they don't just stop making estrogen all of a sudden. They actually start producing erratic levels of estrogen. So it's kind of like a roller coaster. So one day it's like an engine that's like sputtering, one day the estrogen level goes sky high and then the next day it's like, oh crap. And then it drops to zero and then it's, in the middle somewhere and then it's down to zero again. And so this erratic volatility is what's responsible for a lot of these symptoms that we experience, like hot flashes, the brain fog, the night sweats, the anxiety, palpitations. It's like we have receptors in our heart and then they have estrogen, then all of a sudden they don't, and then they do, and then it just throws off the entire autonomic system. And
It's amazing. You
yeah,
mentioned the brain. That was another place where I think perimenopause, we talk about the things that we can see, the sweats, the things like that, not being able to sleep. I have been very transparent that I was not prepared for how my brain was
yeah,
just gonna betray me. during this season.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad to hear you break down how it is a layer over everything that's happening in your body. And that is where I feel like maybe if we talked about it more openly with other women, it wouldn't feel like this shameful thing that's
Yeah.
happening. Because I thought I was crazy most days. I will say about 5 years ago was when this all
Yeah.
started for me. And
Yeah.
if you could have just shown me some kind of what, like if something's hurting, let's put a band-aid on it. If you've got a headache, you take a pill for it. But when everything is happening all at once, it's quite the adventure, I'll say that.
Yeah, and it's so hard because not everybody experiences perimenopause the same way. And each person's experience is very real. But what you feel could be extremely different, or how you transition to menopause could be extremely different than how your best friend or your sister maybe, or there is some genetic, but maybe your best friend or colleague does. And because of that, plus the lack of research and the lack of understanding, just leads a lot of women, plus, the cultural women just take on, take on, take on, and they don't complain, and I mean, this is a cross-cultural phenomenon,
Yeah,
I've realized as I've grown older, but just some of that whole thing just creates this, like, perfect storm where women have suffered and suffered,
yeah,
and they don't speak up. And, physicians haven't been trained on it, so you tell your physician and they're like, everything looks normal. It's in your head, your blood counts are normal, and
yeah,
your heart's fine, and, there's nothing you do. If maybe you have depression, take an antidepressant." And women are like, "I've never had depression. Like, where did this come from?" All of
right.
us. Really what makes midlife so complicated is that there are so many factors contributing to
Yeah,
health. And so I know this is a talk about menopause, but I really want people to take away from here the fact that when I assess a woman's health or a patient's health, I think about it in like these four large buckets, okay? And I think they're all actually equally important, and they all come together at midlife. First is, you have to think about, like, you have to assess what I call kind of like genetics and upbringing.
mm,
Okay. So every person is unique. Like, some people have genetic risk for diabetes, right? Some people have genetic risk for certain cancers. There's nothing they can do about that. Or, maybe an upbringing, somebody had some trauma that had affected their mental health and it's showing up now
mm,
in midlife. If you have a
yeah.
genetic predisposition to diabetes, most people don't get diabetes in their 20s, they get it in their 40s and 50s, right? So that's
Ah, okay.
coming in, or cardiovascular disease, maybe whatnot. So there's like genetics and upbringing. That's like one bucket. Then the second bucket I always tell patients to think about is their current lifestyle. Now, all of a sudden, nutrition becomes important, sleep becomes really important, exercise, right? Mental health, stress, like community support, all of these things that we used to just kind of wing as we were younger, they are all affecting our health. So they're impacting our health in such a significant way now that
Yeah.
maybe it didn't happen earlier. Then third of all are medical conditions and chronic disease. If patients have hypertension, if they have hypothyroidism we know mimics a lot of perimenopause, right? So do the symptoms mimic perimenopause, like
Gotcha.
fatigue and brain fog and you know iron deficiency. Like, there's a lot of just medical conditions that you have to assess for and rule out. And that's contributing. Now, on top of all of that, the fourth category is hormone transitions. So of course, like, a woman could she could be iron deficient and it's making her
Mhm.
tired, and it's making her feel, maybe feel like anxious or have a little depression. She could have had maybe she's a victim of trauma or abuse as a child, and now, like, just her
Mm,
life situation is really affecting her mental health, so she's anxious and depressed, having symptoms of anxiety and depression that are worsening from that trauma. And then maybe on top of that, she's perimenopausal. And so
right.
estrogen level is volatile and it's creating all this hormonal shifts, dramatic changes in her body.
Mhm.
So, looking at a woman in midlife, like, I really want people to know there's hardly ever just one answer. We have to
Yeah.
look at all the factors. So I can throw hormones at this patient, but it's not going to cure her mental health concerns uh,
Mm,
completely, right? It might make an effect on the hormonal contribution, but
yeah.
if we don't fix the iron deficiency, she's still going to be really tired and she might be depressed and anxious and, have panic attacks and all of that. If we don't maybe address the trauma and how that's impacting her life today and her relationships, and that also,
Mhm.
we can't just throw estrogen at it. But at the same time, hormone therapy can be such a powerful tool in the right patient. So,
Now, let me ask you this because I'm again thinking of the average person that is watching this right now and she's probably checking boxes, mentally checking boxes. Yep, that's me. Yep, I have that. Yep, I'm fighting this. And she's going to be inspired after watching this. Like, okay, I am ready to make that appointment. Who is she telling all this to? Is she showing up to her primary? Is she maybe journaling for a little while to see where the trends are coming together, or what is that step of when
yeah.
she has this first awareness that, okay, I'm not crazy, maybe I can get some help for this?
Yeah. Yeah, you're asking like where does she get help and how does she go about it? So my first recommendation, you hit the nail on the head, is to journal symptoms. I think that I always tell patients, write down your symptoms, write down when you're having your cycles. Are they light? Are they heavy? How's your mood? Because with hormone changes, especially in perimenopause, we see that some symptoms only show up in the second half of the cycle, like the days right before you get your period. And, we can treat those differently. Whatever those symptoms are, good days, bad days, I would 100% sit down and journal all my symptoms for a couple of months. That would be great. Prepare a list of questions for a physician and really be targeted in what your concern is. The more specific you can be and the more data you can present to a doctor or
Mhm.
provider, the more they will be forced to listen. Okay. Collect all your personal history, medical history, family history, all your
Yeah.
previous labs, what were your pregnancies like? What was your postpartum time like? Kind of have all that information in your pocket so that you can present it to your physician. That's what a patient can do in terms of prepping for an appointment. I think it's really important to try to find a physician who is willing to listen and has the expertise to understand what's happening in women's health. And that's tough. It is tough
Mm.
as their knowledge is increasing and doctors are really getting more involved. But one place I tell people to start is the Menopause Society. It's a great clinical society. They're the ones that do the board certification for menopause certified practitioners, and they keep a database on their website of physicians who are menopause
Ah.
certified. So that's a good place to start, at least, because you know that these physicians have done some coursework and some education in menopause.
That
Yeah.
is helpful because I love a good step guide, a good framework or what have you, but I'm going to list and let me also pause because I will forget. I am going to put links to the resources that Dr. Kumar is mentioning so that you don't have to go and figure this out and misspell something with all your brain fog and your panic attacks that are happening. I'm
Yes.
gonna put a link there to make it easy for the girls that are watching this. I'm also wondering, so like you go to wherever, and let's just say they do go to their primary, and this is the person that they trust. They know all the other things that have happened in their history. Are there maybe, and I'm gonna put you on the spot with this, are there maybe like some knockout questions, some red flags that we need to listen for? Because I know when I hear the numbers of how many people are possibly not as aware of this as
Mhm.
we would hope,
Mhm.
and we know now, I think just Gen X, my precious Gen X women are listening to this and we are having a moment speaking up and, putting ourselves first, thank goodness. But at the same time, I want to know, if they're going to these doctor appointments and they're spilling out everything, is there anything that maybe they should be like, okay,
Yeah.
I really need to maybe seek additional resources if I'm not getting answers on this thing?
Yeah. So I think a good physician. So I'm going to give you some advice on what I think makes a good physician in general.
Please. Yes.
So I think a good menopause physician, you want somebody who has some clinical experience. I kind of touched on this, some clinical experience and certifications, sort of the education to manage whatever you're looking for. Okay. So if you go to, I don't know, if you go to a cardiologist, they're going to be like, they have no, they have no, that's not their training. That's not their expertise.
Right.
So that's number one, which we talked about. I think that any physician that's good will work with you to rule out any other medical conditions that could be contributing to your symptoms. They will not automatically jump to one conclusion. Okay. And it should be you should feel comfortable because it should be a shared decision and you should feel educated. Like a
Mm,
physician should be able to walk you through, be like, hey, you have fatigue. These are the things I'm thinking, and these are my top differentials. This is why, and this is how I would like to begin working it up. The other point is, I think patients, this might seem counterintuitive, but I think patients should think favorably of a doctor who tells them I don't know. Because
ah,
I think when a physician tells you they don't ever, that means they are aware of their limitations.
yeah,
And maybe they don't know, but that also means they will try to hopefully find you somebody or find the answers themselves. But you know that they're trying to learn and they believe you and accept what you're saying. So don't be afraid of a doctor that says, hey, look, I don't know, but let me
yeah.
work on it or let me find somebody who can help you better. I think the most harmful thing that I hear women who come to me a lot of times, they've been to a physician previously and they're like, their physician just says, nothing's wrong. That's not true. So when you have these
Mm,
kind of I don't know, gaslighting type. I hate that. I don't know if I love that word, but it kind of, this kind of response like, "Oh, everything's fine. You don't need hormone therapy. You're not in menopause. Don't make a big deal about it." That can be incredibly invalidating. And it really shows that you're dealing with somebody that maybe has a little bit more of a narrow perspective, you know?
yeah.
Does that kind of answer your question?
It
Yeah.
does, because I'm even going back to when I first I think I always understood that there was the possibility of hormone therapy, but it was truly just estrogen. That's the only word I'd ever heard related to, menopausal hormone therapy. I didn't understand that there was a few other options, and so when I got to enough awareness to start asking questions about treatment, I think the reaction then, and again, I understand that I'm a little more advanced. I'm
Yeah.
several years
I
postmenopausal.
I know. I think probably when you went through menopause, there was, like, nobody who knew what to do.
Now, I mean,
I don't even
and
know
but
what I would tell you.
I had your good experience that you're saying. The initial reaction was, "I don't know," and I was shocked, but you're right. It did give me a little bit of comfort that somebody didn't try to wing it with my health. So, it made me just start looking everywhere. So, by the time we met and I told you that I'd done the scavenger hunt of all of the solutions, and I'm still on a journey. So, that's why I'm listening to this and I'm taking all these mental notes, but like the woman that is listening right now and she is wondering, okay, everything that she's saying, again, she's checking all these mental boxes and she's like, hey, I'm ready. I am looking for whatever that intervention is going to be. Is there anything that she should be thinking, like what's safe, what's not safe, or how does this look for actually finding some type of medication, prescriptions, or whatever?
Yeah, so I think you're asking about, like, treatment options for perimenopausal women, and this is a really fun and fascinating topic to talk about because it's been such a swinging pendulum, right? Believe it or not, back in the 70s, 80s, I think, 90s, all menopausal women were on hormone therapy. It was such a widely prescribed and commonly accepted thing. Like, it blows my mind to even think that today because I trained in the thousands, and when I trained in the 2000s, it was, you might as well poison the patient if you give them hormone.
Right. It was method.
So that there was the pendulum was on that side. Then in
Yeah.
2002, we had this study, the WHI, which was this massive study of almost 70,000 women looking at the effects of hormone therapy and how women, the safety of it, and looking at the safety and the effects of hormone therapy on women's health. And they basically concluded overnight that hormone therapy is causes breast cancer, causes uterine cancer, causes strokes, causes heart disease, dementia, all sorts of things. And the NIH put out a notice that overnight, put out a notice overnight saying every woman needs to throw away her hormone therapy. This is going to kill you. So that was in 2001, 2002. And until, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago, maybe 2020 ish or
Yeah.
so, that has been the standard. So anyone who has trained in medicine during that time has been told. Like I did my residency in 2007, no, 2000 to 2014, 2011, 2014. And I was told therapy is a big no-no from women. So anyways, now what they have done, what researchers have done, they have reanalyzed the data. They have repeated some of the trials and they have looked at the data a lot more carefully. And so now what we're actually finding out is that hormone therapy is not dangerous in the ways that we thought it was. There are some significant differences. First of all, the hormones that were used in the trial were synthetic hormones. Okay, so that's really important. The hormones that we're using now in today's day and age for menopause treatment are bioidentical hormones. And so there are some clinical differences and effect differences from that. The other trials are still in process with the bioidentical hormones. And bioidentical basically means it's the same hormone that's made in your body. It's the same compound versus synthetic estrogens, which are like the estrogens and progesterones that are in birth control. Those are
Ah,
not the exact same compound that your body makes, the
right.
exact same molecular structure. What we're finding out now that is that a lot of those conclusions are invalidated and actually not true, and that there's certain populations that may have higher risk of hormone therapy and certain may not. But a lot of the data that we have today it's been kind of the pendulum has kind of swung back the other way, and I think on social media and in the wellness industry hormones are the answer to everything and they're going to save your life and you're never going to get a heart attack and you're never going to diabetes and you're going to live till you're 100. That's not true either. So I think like one of my objectives in my career right now is to help bring that pendulum back to the middle where
Yeah.
we know that hormones are much safer than we previously thought in terms of breast cancer risk, cardiovascular disease, dementia. There's really, except for certain populations, like if you've had a history of breast cancer, then a personal history, then yes, hormone therapy may be contraindicated for you.
Mm.
However, if you're a healthy person who has not had breast cancer, we have actually no data that estrogen therapy increases your risk of breast cancer. It's being found to decrease your risk.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is the most
Okay.
fascinating to me that estrogen therapy has actually been shown over and over again to decrease risk of breast cancer, not increase.
And see there, I mean, I'm so glad that you're making the distinction because you're right. And when you say 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it doesn't even feel that long because I was very much, like I say, I was a whole grown up during this whole time when the pendulum is swinging back and forth. So you're right. You're having conversations at one season, you blink, 10 years have gone by, and you're just like, oh, okay, so there is an option in this pretty much this direction. But that's not the whole picture, right? Because we're also like you mentioned hyperthyroidism and other things that
So I think hormone therapy we know now it
mhm,
is safer than we thought, much safer than
mhm,
we thought. Now, can you take high doses of hormone therapy for 40 years and it's going to be great for you? We just don't know. Still
ah,
a lot of unknowns. Like we don't have studies that are, the WHI data has been, it's been about 20, 25 years. And so they have certain conclusions and they are showing safety in terms of cancer risk, breast cancer risk, uterine cancer, colorectal cancer, etc. And they are showing that if hormone therapy started earlier, it does not increase cardiovascular disease. And it may help cardiovascular disease risk. So, all the evidence that's coming out is good. But I think anyone taking hormone therapy should know also that we have certain unknowns. We
mm,
know it's safe for 5 years, 10 years, but is it safe for 30 years, 20? We just don't know. I'm not saying that it's
yeah.
not, and we just don't know right now, but
Yeah,
we
so it's not
know
it's never a set it and forget it.
it's not a set it and forget it, and whatever I tell patients today, I'm like, you have to stay in touch with the physician because 5 years from now, the data could change. But it's a fascinating field. It's changing every day. There's new stuff coming out, new guidelines, and it's just so fun to like continuously be learning and finding out what's up, what's new.
And the other area, and you were gonna, I think, gonna mention it anyway, is about the supplements
Mhm.
that we should be thinking about in perimenopause because I just happen to be married to a total geek. I think our cabinet, it rivals the health food section of any store. I mean, my husband has everything. They all taste terrible. I know this from experience. But he believes in, the supplements. That's his world. So, I mean, I'm very curious for someone that's a total newbie and they're
Yeah.
hearing this and they're just like, "Well, okay, I've got to think about supplements too." So, what does that look like? What are the types of things we're looking at?
Yeah. So supplements are such an interesting part of all of this because, just the present cultural climate, the political climate, I think it has breeded a lot of mistrust and
Mm,
just no political statements, but that is people as a generation, as a population have I think have started to have some mistrust of authority, of government, of regulated things.
yeah.
And somehow the supplement industry has capitalized on this. I will say, supplements are not all bad or all good. But the thing that people need to know is that they are not regulated like a medication. Okay. Supplements are regulated like a food. So, what that means is that if a company is making a supplement like, I don't know, some soy capsules, right? All they have to do is prove that it won't hurt the people who are taking it. They don't actually have to prove that it's effective or safe that it's effective for the indication.
Yeah.
And as a supplement, they're allowed to write anything on the bottle that they want. And does not have to be proven by validated research studies. Okay. This is how supplements are different than medications.
Mm,
Because of that, what you'll see sometimes is that some companies will underdose medications. They might sprinkle turmeric into the capsule and then be like, this has got anti inflammatory and anti carcinogenic, anti cancer properties, which which is probably not true. A lot of supplements, they may not describe side effects or they're not regulated for consistent dosing. Now, all of that being said, it's a little unfortunate because supplements can play a role. I mean, studies are showing that there are certain alternative prescriptions, alternative therapies that have good evidence. So I always tell patients that, if you want to go that route, you really need to find a provider who knows which ones have good evidence and knows which brands are properly regulated and
ah,
dosed for safety, for efficacy, for consistency. So, there are some third party certifiers that will regulate certain supplements. So, always, one of them is USP and NSF. You should always check for that certification, at least as a starting point. But because of the way that they're regulated, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a great idea to just go and believe everything
mm,
that's marketed on the bottle.
yeah. I never thought to ask about brand or maybe like reputable brands. I've never thought to ask that question. Usually, I get whatever the supplement name and I'm just going to Amazon, finding what's cheapest?
No, because each brand is manufacturing it themselves and their quality is dependent on them. And one of the things I tell people like natural can be safe, but
Mhm.
natural is really just a marketing term, right? Arsenic is natural, like poison ivy is natural, but like I'm not going to go lay in a bed of poison ivy.
Yeah.
At the same time, if we treated them like a medication and took them as prescribed like a medication, they can have potential positive results. But it's important to think about the efficacy, but also they can have potential side effects, drug
Mhm.
interactions. So,
Yeah.
I'd say if there's a good medication that's FDA regulated and approved, I mean, these are safe. We actually know what the side effects are versus in supplements, sometimes we don't. That being said, I do recommend supplements to patients, and there are very good indications for them at in certain for certain conditions and in certain populations. However, it's just important to find somebody who can give you the right information.
Yeah.
I hate it when the other week I had a patient who takes like sea salt, some Celtic sea salt, and I was like, "You're taking sea salt, like you're just," and it had
Oh.
all this list of like wellness indications, and I was like, "I think this is just salt, like really
Oh,
expensive salt."
no.
And it's unfortunate, and I don't blame the patients because they're just trying to feel better and they're trying to do it in a
Yeah.
safe way, and they're not being able to find a provider or a physician or whoever who can give them the real truth
Yeah.
or the real data. And so people are
Yeah.
shooting in the dark and just trying whatever it takes. But
Yeah, you're right. I mean, but I hear what you're saying because there are so many times where you mentioned I'm dealing with a different situation with my father's health. And it is so much of the conversation is the whole list of medications that he's on.
oh,
So every doctor that we speak with, I've got to bring that tablet with me and say, okay, here's everything that's in his system right now. And it's almost like Tetris, making sure that one thing is safe with the other thing. So, being there to just have a well-rounded conversation, I take that as, our responsibility on the patient side to just say, "Okay, hey, doctor, don't these are some pieces of the puzzle to help us figure this out," to filter out all of the possible things that are going on. So, with women coming into these conversations with their doctor, and I mean, what are we feeling like this is a moment where women are being heard? Is it maybe that women are getting better at articulating what's going on with them? Or is it just time that the medical community is saying, "Hey, yeah, we're paying attention. We're learning new things. What's happening?"
I think we need more time.
Mm,
I think that women are starting to articulate what they want and what they need and what they're suffering through. I think that the medical community needs more time to catch up
mm,
in order to best serve these patients because there is a lack of knowledge, like lack of research. Okay, there's just a lot of things we still don't know. We can theorize,
yeah,
but in addition to that, there's not a lot of people who even know what we know. They don't
that's
know the
amazing.
research. And there is a huge amount of providers who are providing therapies that are not established or research based. The biggest one that we advise against is testosterone pellets. And so many med spas and, unofficial clinics can get a hold of these pellets and they do make women feel great in the short run. It's a high dose of testosterone, and you feel as good as a man, or
Yeah, yeah,
energy, exercise, libido, like the fatigue is gone, sleep is great. But what those side effects are to the body, especially at that high level, I can tell you, I have seen so many women and they'll say, yeah, they never told me the side effects. They just told me I'd feel better. And I was like, that should be a red flag. If
yeah,
somebody gives you a medication and doesn't tell you any potential side effects, you need to look elsewhere,
yeah.
because there are very well known side effects and some are irreversible of high doses of testosterone. And it's not intentional.
Irreversible.
Some are irreversible. And I will say those happen at high doses over a long period of time.
Okay, okay.
We're talking things like voice deepening. You can have changes to your genital organs, like clitoral enlargement is one that can happen. Yes, so it can happen, and it's irreversible. And a lot of that happens at high doses, so super
Mhm.
physiologic levels, which is what you get with the pellets. Now, in contrast, if we do testosterone therapy with the FDA approved medication with a very low dose and we monitor a patient's levels, it's very safe. All the data we have so
Okay,
far, it shows that it's very safe and effective, but it has to be done in the right way. And I think,
okay.
I think where we are, I think we need more time. I think the pendulum has swung. Like I said, there's an element of mistrust. I think the social media influencer culture has to be reined in a little bit.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for patients when they're looking for their help to, when they take advice from somebody, look at that person's credentials and their commitment to expertise, not their commitment to making a buck off of TikTok, and not their commitment to selling expensive products that really are just profits for the wellness industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Physicians, like, I don't sell anything. I don't want to profit off of therapies, right?
Yeah.
Because the best therapies really are, in my opinion, and are the ones that are research based, and you can get them at your CVS or Walgreens.
Yeah.
And those are safe and they're effective.
Now, let me ask you because and I am hearing you because I shared with you myself that, yeah, the gap between tradition, I mean, I'm saying traditional with my air quotes, and what was happening at the wellness spas. Yeah, I absolutely was one of those people that fell into it because I wasn't getting ants. I wasn't getting the full, what is the word that I could say? It didn't feel like everything was being addressed in, my regular conversations with my primary and then my OB, which I now know that my OB, bless her heart, she did her best, but she also was very honest with those I don't knows, and that in a strange way brought me comfort for somebody to just admit, not really sure, it could be this, it could be that, da, 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 da. And so I went out and started doing, looking at the wellness spas as well. But what is it like if we're coming to someplace like your clinic? What is going to be different in that scenario compared to just me going to my primary or, like I said, I go to my well woman and I'm thinking everything's going to be answered in this well woman exam, but really that's not it at all.
No, no, that's not it. Yeah, so I'm, a physician at Vita Family Medicine. So we are a direct care concierge style clinic, and we specialize in very comprehensive personalized care. So we actually, when I get a new patient, my first visit with this patient is about 90 minutes long. And in those 90
Okay,
minutes,
wait, 90 minutes. Did you were you misspoke? I mean, because I
did
don't think
I
I've
add
ever
a
talked to any doctor for 90
Oh, yeah.
minutes unless
I
it was
tell
a root
every
canal.
patient when I started I tell every patient at the beginning of the appointment, I was like, "You're gonna be really tired." Every patient walks in and they're all excited, and by the time they leave, they're like, "I don't even know what you're saying anymore." But we talk for 90 minutes, and let me tell you, it's 90 minutes of me questioning them. So I wanna know, like, their whole history. I wanna know, when do they everything about their hormonal health growing, as they grew up, as they aged. I want to know their family history. I want to know their lifestyle. I want to know, what do they eat in a day? Where do they what's their exercise? What are their barriers to their good health? What are their goals? What are their relationships? And in those 90 minutes, I think that I get a much, much more complete picture of a patient, a woman, I see males and females. So a patient, her life, where she's at, what is troubling her the most, and what can we do to get her feeling better. So our comprehensive eval, so we have the first visit, it's 90 minutes and it's just questions. I also do the physical exam in that. I love to do
Mhm.
it in person because I think it's so important to, like, see the patient. And I'm a little old school. I love to examine the patient. I know I can get a chest x-ray, but I love to listen to the lungs anyway. And so we do the physical exam and the questions, and then I'll order any lab work or imaging that the patient needs. Then after they get that done, we do a second visit. And the second visit is 30 to 45 minutes. And that's when I sit down and I give them a full assessment. And I say, okay, these are from what I know today now, these are the conditions, or these are the factors that are contributing to your current health status. And this is the plan of how I would like to proceed making you feel better. With an understanding that it's a fluid plan. The woman's health
Mhm.
the patient's health is going to be changing continuously. And, depending on how they respond to therapies, it'll change. But we do a stepwise approach. Maybe some patients need medication right off the bat, some patients need hormones. Some patients need to fix lifestyle. The most important thing for me when I see a patient is to get them to sleep. Like, I don't do anything
Mm,
for you until I get you sleeping 7, 8 hours
yeah.
of good quality sleep. So, whatever that takes in a healthy fashion, we start with sleep and then we address other things. So, every patient is different. And then, I do this comprehensive eval. We make a plan. And then I meet with patients at least every 1 to 2 months for about 4 to 6 months ish at least, or sometimes up to a year, and really try to track the changes that we're making and how effective they are for the patient.
Yeah.
And sometimes stuff comes up that I'm not sure, but then because I see them frequently, I have time to, do some research or ask around or find a specialist that can help. And that's how we really make difference, in a patient's life. Doing a once a year visit is just, I don't know, 10 for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There's just no way. I don't know how our society fell into this trap. I mean, I
Yeah.
do know the insurance companies did it, but that's not prevented. That's not healthcare. That's not good
Yeah.
care. Good care comes from having a relationship with your doctor, sharing with them your life events, your challenges, your barriers, and that's the only way I can find solutions for patients that work for them?
Yeah.
I mean, it's little things like I can tell you how many patients are struggling to lose weight and they don't eat breakfast. I'm just like, go home
Mm.
and for the next month, your goal is eat breakfast every day, and then they come back like
Yeah.
3 pounds lighter, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "That was" like, "Eat a good protein breakfast," and I was like, "That's your job for the next month. Make that a habit.
Yeah.
Do it every day and make it a part of your, like, non-negotiables."
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you mentioned exactly that, I think a few minutes ago about we can't eat and drink the way we used to because rude awakening, where I used to be a margarita and a wine girly. That was
Yeah,
my thing. You could tell me where to get the best margarita in town. I knew that. How the wine pairings need to go. I was that person.
yeah,
Now I can't really enjoy it because it's one of my triggers, and I can almost set my watch by it. If I'm gonna have a full-blown sugary frozen margarita at 4 o'clock, whatever, on a Saturday afternoon, I can tell you almost to the minute when I'm gonna start spazzing out and having crazy hot flashes or all the
yeah,
things.
and you won't sleep.
And so yeah, I won't sleep well. It's in my system, whatever sugar is processing. And so it's like I had to mourn the loss of that girl because that one dinner with that one drink or that one wine or whatever, it's not worth me being up all night or tossing and turning. So I'm so glad that you're talking about the simple things that are truly within our control where we can say, you know what, have I checked this? Have I tried that? Have I paid attention to this thing? And it's amazing how much ground we could probably cover on our own
Yeah.
in addition to having that conversation with the doctor and just saying, "Hey, here's what I've tried and here's what worked or hasn't worked."
Yeah, and, yeah, absolutely, and I think, it's just fascinating once you really get to know patients and get to know their barriers. I mean, you can make so much of a difference. Like even you're talking about alcohol. I'm not one who makes anybody cut out anything. So I believe in moderation, and I think that happiness is actually the biggest predictor. I know per the research, happiness is the biggest predictor of longevity. So if a glass of wine makes you that happy and otherwise, you don't have risk factors, you're
Yeah.
otherwise healthy. I won't say no. But there's also even better ways to drink alcohol, maybe drink it early. Like for some patients, they don't sleep well. I can say, okay, well, have it in the morning or not in the morning, have it with brunch, or drink it earlier so that it's out of your system by the time you go to bed,
Yes.
and
Yep.
all these little things there's just no way for patients to figure this out on their own.
Right.
And, in my old clinic practice where I was insurance based and I had limited time, I told so many patients that they need to lose weight, and I'm like, eat more fruits and vegetables, eat less processed food, and exercise more. That's going to fix your health. And like, I had a 0% success rate with that.
Yeah. 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 Very
Um,
broad.
very broad, and how do you start? Where do you start from? And then it just doesn't work. But yeah, like I think, as a preventative care midlife physician, I can really sit down and we can talk about what are the small steps that you can take that could make the biggest impact, that work with your life and your lifestyle. So
Yeah.
I love
Well,
what I
let me ask.
yeah.
Oh, hey, I would love to just be able to sit in that 90-minute appointment and just go through everything thoroughly.
You'll have to
My
take a
god.
nap afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, I'll have to take you up on that because I even like going into appointments now, I've got everything written down so that I can like hit all the points in that 10-minute
Mhm.
conversation.
Yeah,
I'm
and,
just like,
we
how
have
efficient can I be?
well, my goal is always to get to know the patient. So we also
Mhm.
have, a direct messaging app where patients can like message me. So sometimes they think of stuff afterwards or they have a question and they can just text me. And I love that. I love being able to be like, oh, yeah, this is the answer. This is what,
That is awesome.
rather than leaving them in the dark. So,
That is awesome. Okay, well, let's give some parting advice to the woman that is watching this right now. Like I said, she's gotten all of this new information from you. She is inspired to take control of some things. So, what do you want to leave them with of how they can advocate for themselves, some things that they can start thinking about on their own? What is the best parting advice you can give these folks?
yeah, I think I would say patients need to be honest with themselves and give themselves grace and acceptance. So both, right?
Yeah.
And try to be objective about your symptoms. In the sense that more data you can collect, the more objective. If you journal, you get like a timeline, and you can kind of see how
Mm.
much symptoms are impacting you. I think that's the best you can do to come to a provider. And I think that being very patient and giving yourself a lot of grace and acceptance is really important. I think midlife is a time when you have to slow down. Midlife women today are living life like no other generation has. High achieving careers, younger children than they ever had previously, aging parents, demands of social media. We are taking on a lot and not giving
Yeah.
ourselves enough grace and acceptance. And that's so important. Be honest with yourself and stick to your priorities and really prioritize your health, and you don't have to be apologetic for that. I really think
You
have
don't
to
have to be
be
you don't have to being a woman.
don't have to apologize for being a woman, don't have to apologize for not feeling well, for not being 100% there. Menopause, I think it's a very real thing.
Yeah.
And it's really important to be moderate, to also be realistic. I do encourage women, I think, well, even with myself, I try to be honest with what my symptoms are. Discipline is important, to be successful in life, but at the same time, you have to give yourself acceptance and grace for what you're
Yeah.
feeling. So,
Absolutely. That is fantastic advice because I will definitely say that yes, this generation of women coming into menopause right now, we have a lot to say. I will say that.
yeah.
And like I said, someone that has come to this episode, they have been Googling all of the things. And I truly hope that number one, that it was educational, but then also hopefully that it maybe calmed your nerves about this because I can say 5 years ago, I was that freaking out woman,
I mean,
brain was malfunctional
5 years ago, it was much harder for you to find help. I definitely
big
know
time.
so. And I think it is
Yeah.
still incredibly challenging, but the resources are out there. You just have to be really proactive. And
Yeah. And
yeah,
like I like what you said about giving the medical community time, and I'm okay with that. I having that said out loud, I think it is very important to understand that this is not going to be a one-time fix, number one, and it is kind of a give and take partnership. Like you said, you're doing your part, you're keeping records and journaling, and it's helping your doctor narrow down of all the thousands of things that could be happening to you. We can at least narrow it down to a few that we can
yeah.
attack.
I
Well,
mean, I do
maybe
believe
that's
most physicians are good people and they want to help their
hmm
patients. And sometimes it's just lack of knowledge, or it
yeah,
can be stress or whatnot. But the medical community will catch up. It will take some time, but help is out there. There are
it is.
resources. So yeah,
It is, and I'll encourage anybody that is watching this. You don't have to go it alone. You can get some help. So, Dr. Kumar, this has been a fantastic conversation. I am
it's been
always
great
learning.
talking to you. It's been great talking to
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, you blew my mind just with talking about, like I said, everything that you said when we met in person. I was like, my God, she is talking about me. She knows my story somehow. And I was like, I got to have you on the podcast so you can teach all of us about this. So I am going to link Dr. Kumar's information in the show notes. Yes, she is Houston based, so I don't know if anybody's going to want to fly from across the country to come and see you or not, but you will have a way to contact her, and maybe that could be the start of their journey as well. More than anything, to the woman that is watching this, thank you for being here, but know that this is not all of the answers. You do need to step into some type of relationship with your medical provider and just start, getting some insights on what's happening to you in this moment in time, and then be prepared to go on a journey all over the place. Let's just keep that conversation going for all women everywhere to just keep learning more about this and having the open conversation. So thank you very much for joining us for this episode. More than anything, take care of yourself and make sure that you are living your best midlife. See you next time.